Ever find yourself unsure what colors to use while painting? Let's try something new.
That the entirety of the cosmos is accessible to each and every individual's mind, connected to the great mind, the great spirit.
Welcome back to the Studio Collectors. This is a beginner explains, but I'm not really here to explain anything to you today. Instead, we're gonna try something new. Now, usually when I'm painting in the studio, Kenneth is the one that's guiding me on how to paint the minis because I still don't have a good idea on how to use the colors right. But today, Kenneth is not in the studio, so let's try something new without his consent. Well, yeah, I'm not really explaining anything to you today. I'm showing you something that you could do if you're not very confident on picking your own colors. And who knows, maybe it might end up looking better than expected. If anything, it'll just make a fun video. As usual, this video has been divided into useful chapters so you can skip on ahead to find what you're looking for. The chapters are 3D printing, color picking, base coating, layering, and finally, detailing. So, what will we be painting today? Wahahaha. So for today's video, I'll be using a 3D model I found on Thingiverse. I actually printed this out with the studio's 3D printer. I have to give credit where credit is due, and this was made by user BS3. My intention was that I could actually end up using this in a D&D game. I will not spoil what I plan on using it for, just in case my players are watching, but just know that there might be a huge baby dragon coming your way in the future. Side note, you should really learn how to use a 3D printer or at least use 3D printer services. It saves a lot of time, but that's for another video. So, gotta insert a little self-promo here. Last month, Collective actually had a campaign where you could trade in your old paints for AK Gen 3 paints. So I actually have this whole box of paints to pick our colors out from. I'm going to be reaching in and grabbing 4 paints at random. The rules are, I can only use these 4 paints and their higher and lower values to paint the miniature. Okay, so I realized these paints are actually pretty hard to pick out from the box, so I'm moving it over to this little bag that I have here. I feel like it's just easier for me to pick out. So I'm just gonna look away and pick out some paints. So the paints that I managed to pick out were Full Grown Pink, Thousand Sun Blue, Dawn Yellow, and Mephiston Red. These weren't the colors I was expecting. I think I can work with this. Alternatively, if you're a normal person who doesn't have a box of paint to just randomly grab paint out from, you can try using a color palette generator instead. I recommend using colors.co to generate your color palettes because that's what I usually use for my digital art. So just hit the random generator button and see what you get. Without further ado, let's just get right to it. So out of all the colors that I grabbed from the grab bag, I think I'm going to end up using this as the base paint for the dragon. When painting, I was taught the concept of 6:3:1 ratio when it comes to paints. The paint should never be 1:1 when you put them on a model because it will just end up looking strange. So let's get base painting right now. So while I was painting the blue onto the model, I was trying to visualize exactly what I wanted to get done. I'm nowhere near as prepared as Kenneth usually is for these kind of videos, so I was just winging it. You can kind of see me stop every now and then because I was stumped. I was thinking, should I paint everything blue or should I just paint some parts blue? But then if I leave some parts blue, what colors should I use for those? Eventually I just decided to leave the parts that I was unsure about alone because I figured it would come to me once I got the whole thing together. So for the eyes, I actually used about 80% white and then 20% blue because that still counts in the parameters of the rules, even though it does just look like the white of an eyeball. You can see that I'm not very neat with the white, but that's okay because it's still just my first layer. I used to have this habit where I would just go over it and just try to be neat on the first try when I wasn't really prepared to do that yet. So I find it just easier to just paint as quick as I can, and then afterwards I slowly get it to look rounder and more neat. So I think I made the right call with using blue as the base. I can already see it taking shape, and I have a rough idea of how I want to paint it. You'll be surprised at how just adding one color will help you see the bigger picture. So these 3 colors that I got happen to be complementary. Complementary colors are when colors fall in the same range in the color wheel. An example would be orange, brown, and red. Red and blue are actually fairly contrasting colors as well. They are pretty opposite one another in the color wheel. So I'm going to use this to my advantage and use higher and lower values to highlight the mini. To be honest, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but what's the harm in trying? Let's get to layering right now. So I chose to use red because it was very eye-catching against the blue because of its contrasting nature. I also figured that I didn't want the scales to also be blue because then it would just kind of blend into each other and it just wouldn't look as good. I have a little bit of trouble with the little spindles, but I eventually got it. So I decided to use yellow for the belly because I figured that with the red being a contrasting color, the yellow would be a nice complementary color to the blue. So in this case, you would see that the ratio would be 6 to blue, 3 to yellow, and 1 to red. So this is kind of my fault. The yellow that I chose, the bottle itself, the paint wasn't in very good condition. So I ended up having to go over it with multiple coats of paint. Hopefully if you're doing this, it'll be a lot easier on your side. So for the nails, I decided to just use a darker blue. I didn't end up using red or yellow or pink for this because I didn't want people's attention to go towards the nails. I wanted it to be on the dragon's face in general. Or just the decals around him. So with the eyes, I kind of took inspiration with Japanese anime and the way they draw eyes. So I used a light blue for the top part of the eyes, the top half, and I used an even lighter blue for the bottom half so that it kind of looked two-toned. And then originally I wanted to put in dark blue, and then I kind of figured that looks kind of meh, so I just ended up changing it to white because I think it ended up looking a lot cuter that way. So here you can see me try to paint the scales. So at first I tried to paint over the red with yellow to highlight the red, but that didn't work. Well, normally I'm supposed to be telling you exactly what I'm doing in this footage. I had no clue at all what I was really doing because I just had concepts in my head that just didn't work out the way that I was expecting it to. And you know what? That's okay. I got there eventually. I figured out that it would be better to place a mid-tone before I put the yellow. So I actually used a little bit of pink. Huzzah! So I actually decided to go yellow for the wings because I actually figured that it would look better. Because my original intention was to paint it a darker blue. But then I figured it would just kind of blend into everything else, and I just wanted to see what it would look like with yellow, considering how much I liked it on the belly of the dragon as well. So here's me applying the first few layers. It's not the neatest, but it will do for the time being. So I applied pink here because I wanted to be a little bit more experimental. I feel like just using it for the tips of the scales were a little bit boring. So I ended up just trying it out on the belly, and to my surprise, I think it actually looks really, really good. The pink gave it kind of a paisley feel, and I think it ended up working to the benefit of the model. It was an interesting way of painting shadows that I hadn't really considered before, and now that I've tried it, it definitely works, I feel. So I will probably try using that in future models that I paint. So here you can see I'm kind of highlighting the face a little bit so that it's not just all one shade of blue. And then here you can see me using a really, really light shade of blue that I immediately regretted using once I put it down. So I just tried my best to blend it in so that it wasn't such a jarring change of color. And I think it ended up looking okay. I just highlighted where the light would be coming from, and I did it with the tips of the wings as well. Essentially, I just kind of mixed too light of a blue, but then I fixed it by just blending it into the model itself so that it wasn't such a jarring change of color. So I painted in the toes, and I just kind of figured out where the light was coming from, and I painted everything a lighter shade of blue where I know that the light would have been hitting it. So if you're having trouble figuring out where your light source might be coming from to paint your highlights, you can just look at whatever you're using to light up your model in the first place. That's usually one of the best indicators on how to paint your models. That looks kind of okay, right? We're almost done with the dragon. Let's add some details. Since we're going full cutesy, I'm gonna add some hearts, some stars, pretty much just go full girly with this. I'm gonna be using some yellows, some pinks, maybe I might add in red at a higher value. We'll just mess around and see what works. So let's get to detailing right now. Okay, so I'm just kind of having fun here. I was taking inspiration for how the My Little Ponies have little hearts on their hind legs. So I decided I wanted to draw a heart here. Not the best heart, but we can come back to that. So I also thought that the dragon would look nice with spots, so I just put spots here and there. I just had some variation in the size of it. And I thought it added a little bit more contrast to its otherwise completely blue body. And then just for extra cheese, I just put one big old heart shape right in front of the scales, so it's kind of leading up towards a heart, you know? So after I added the red heart, I kind of figured that just having the red heart was a little bit flat, so I thought it would be cute if I added in a second heart inside. Here's one more heart for good measure, and there you have it. While I didn't get to choose the colors, I think I'm really happy with the final product because I managed to use a lot of the composition concepts that I was taught in practice. And there you have it. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, if I do say so myself. This was definitely a challenge having to make it up as I go with these limited colors. Even though I was being strict with it, if something doesn't suit your palette, feel free to change it, it's all in good fun. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. If you found this video useful, give us a like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. And if you want to support this channel even further, head on over to our Patreon and become a Patreon subscriber today. There you'll get a whole slew of painting content that we've been producing over the past year or so. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next Beginner Explains video. Hopefully it won't make you want to vomit blood. Ciao!